Hey, genealogists, it's Craig with Just Genealogy, and it's Book Sunday. And as is typical, when I try to set things up for a Book Sunday, this week we've only got one new book in print. It's called Toe the Mark, and it's a story about the Chico, California running program. And there's a lot of big names I understand here from cross-country kind of stuff, and I don't know a thing about it. But this book was written by David Broom, who writes a lot of books about ships and boats and those kind of things, small ships, small boats in the various navies. He's probably got a dozen books now that relate to that. And so he wanted to do a book on the Chico running program, and here it is. So that's in the warehouse and in print now. We have a couple more Sporatio books that have come out, but they haven't showed up in the warehouse yet. But what has showed up in the warehouse, and this makes me very happy because this means I can get started on the program I really wanted to start 2 months ago, is Numbering is now available. One of the top 12 books that you should have in your library because it tells you how to number your genealogy. And we'll do a couple of sessions on numbering at some point, one on the register format, not my favorite format, and on the NGSQ, National Genealogical Society quarterly format, my favorite format. And I'll tell you now why. When I was younger, this was probably 30 years ago. I was younger 30 years ago. I used to go visit a guy by the name of Milton Rubicam every Thursday, because every Wednesday night I was running the library at the National Genealogical Society quarterly, not the quarterly, at the National Genealogical Society library every Wednesday night for 5 years. I did that. I ran that. I was the volunteer that kept the place open at night so people could come and use it. So I would pick up the NGSQ review books that Wednesday night. And when I came home from work, because I worked at the Naval Hospital Bethesda and I lived in Brentwood, Maryland, and in between there, just off of 410 Northwest Highway, East-West Highway, there was Milt Rubicam's place. So I would drop by and see him. I would turn books in to him for it because he was the book review editor in those days. And I would pick books up, the ones that I dropped off previously, and I would sit with him and I would talk. And once I asked him, listen, I loved talking with this guy. And his wife would always have tea or something to drink or cake or a cupcake or something. It was always a pleasure to go and visit Milton Rubicam. And I asked him one day which numbering system was better. Which one did he prefer? Now remember, he's the NGSQ book review editor. Okay, so he probably had some bias, but he said it was NGSQ and that was his favorite. And I said, well, why? And he said, because at the end of the genealogy, I know how many people are in it. Because remember, with the register, it only carries numbers forward for people that they will talk about in the future. So that said, well, I'll probably say that again when I talk about numbering because it's one of my favorite stories. So numbering's back. And Mastering Genealogical Proof is back. You must own this book. You must. I'm just saying, you must. And we will start talking about this book in depth soon. I keep telling myself soon. What we're going to start with is going through Chapter 1, Genealogy Standard of Proof, and specifically what is the genealogical proof standard, and then take it from there. And we're going to basically read this together, page by page, go through it, and make sure that we all, including me, understand it much better than we understand it now. Also back in print is Genetic Genealogy in Practice, and Miss Debbie Parker Wayne. And I'm glad to see that it's back in print. Also, once we finish with Mastering Genealogical Proof, hopefully by that time, Mastering Genealogical Documentation will be back in print. hopefully. And once that happens, we'll work on the documentation book. Then we will move into this book and then another book written by Blaine Bettinger on DNA in its second edition. And we'll work on those so we have a better understanding of DNA. I have brought some more books in from GPC that I didn't know really existed, that some of you may be interested in. I've always talked about Hessians, and probably one day I'll talk to you all about Hessians. But in the French regiments that came to fight for the rebels, or with the rebels, not for, but with the rebels, there were also Germans. And someone, I don't know who, has said there were probably as many Germans in the French regiments as there were in the British auxiliary regiments. And there is a book that's been out for a long time, and unfortunately I was unaware of it, by Tolsman, who's actually one of our authors too, but this one's published by GPC, is A German Regiment among the French auxiliary troops in the American Revolutionary War. Now we have on CD and in book form, the report of the French troops that were in the Revolutionary War. It was a 1906 government Senate document jointly done with the French government. And I haven't gone to check to see if this regiment specifically is in there, because this doesn't deal with them at the name level. And I'm fairly confident that the report does deal with them at the name level. And this regiment seems very familiar to me name-wise, so I'm thinking that it's in that material. I never really gave it much thought, but there is a small little book out there taken from the Pennsylvania German Society, an 1899 book on Pennsylvania, the German influence in its settlement and development. And basically what it's talking about is German immigration from New York into Pennsylvania, whereas my thought process was most of the German immigration, and it still might be most, but much of the German immigration came in through Philadelphia, not in from New York. So this is going to be a little bit of a read for me myself, so I can equate myself with the New York piece of German migration into Pennsylvania. I've been searching for this book for a while. I didn't realize that Genealogical Publishing Company had reprinted it. Originally, I would get it from Clausen Press in a hardback version, much cheaper than this version, by the way. But this is 10 Mile Country and Its Pioneer Families by Leckie. And Howard Leckie had an interest in the upper Monongahela Valley. So that would be Greene and with Washington County. So if you've got family, the 10 Mile Country is very much like the Pennsylvania version of the Shenandoah Valley. It's like an extension of the Shenandoah Valley up into Pennsylvania. So you find that people are moving back and forth through this entire area. And when we look at the books about Shenandoah, they don't go much farther north than Frederick County. They don't cross the river. This crosses the river, and Maryland's so tiny there where it crosses the river that you could walk that far in no time at all. So this carries things farther north into Pennsylvania, and it has a lot of genealogy in it. And I'm actually glad to find it because I've been talking to Mary Clausen for a while about, I want this book, and now I have it, although it was cheaper in hardback when Mary Clausen did it. Now, in the same vein, in the same area, there is Virginia Claims to the Land in Western Pennsylvania and an account of the donation lands of Pennsylvania. And that also is a book that we've added to the repertoire, although with some digging on fold 3, you could probably get to all this because it's by William Henry Engle, and he's the guy that created a good portion of Pennsylvania archives. So it might very well exist there if you have a Pennsylvania archives connection because you have a subscription to fold 3, but you don't need a subscription to fold 3. You just might think you do because fold 3, Pennsylvania archives on fold 3 is free. So you might try that. I only put one copy of this in stock just in case there was somebody who didn't have fold 3 and didn't know it was actually on fold 3. Believe me, if I think something is going to be somewhere else and I know it, I'm not going to hide it from you, no matter what it costs me. I have a reputation, you know. And then I found a book that I'd never seen before and never actually come across. It's by a man by the name of Henry Whittemore. It's called Genealogical Guide to Early Settlers of America, with a brief history of those of the first generation. And you ought to go to our website and take a look at what it has to say about it. It's probably all Hokum. Hokum, that's what you would describe a genealogical work that does not have references. So it's Hokum, but I like Hokum as a guideline sometimes to lead me down the primrose path, can I say. So don't forget, and one of the reasons why I'm not putting out a discount today is because don't forget that until tomorrow, the end of tomorrow, July 4th, you have 4th shipping, which means you have free shipping at Heritage Books, and that can be worth up to $20. We at Heritage Books never charge more than $20 for a customer to actually get books when it comes to shipping, which means no matter how big your order is, it's still only $20. Of course, if it's a small order, it's not $20. It just feels like it's a lot. So buy a lot of books. That's the only solution I have. And tell your friends to buy a lot of books. You know, there are not very many places left anymore that sell a whole bunch of genealogy books. And it's a struggle to stay in business. I keep telling myself. I've had this shirt for 20 years. It's time for me to be able to buy a new shirt, don't you think? Actually, all my shirts are over 20 years old, I think. I'm actually not sure about that. Anyway, a couple more books that have been sitting here because I haven't put them in the system. And if I tell you about them, I have to put them in the system. They've been sitting on my desk for a couple of weeks, which is sort of a shame. One is the 2-volume set, the historical collections of the state of Pennsylvania. So that one is back in print, and I'll put it in the must-do pile. And the other is the history of Franklin, Jefferson, Washington, Crawford, and Gasconde, I can't pronounce words, counties in Missouri. It's back in print also. It's one of the good speed books. I don't know what I've forgotten. There's bound to be something else. But this has been Book Sunday. And as usual, I'm Craig. And this is Just Genealogy, where we're trying to teach people stuff, trying to let them know about stuff. Because I love stuff. I hope you do too. Enjoy your 4th. Stay safe. Once upon a time on a 4th, I blew a firecracker up in my eye and I was blind for a while. I think it was called a lode, L-O-D-E. Got down real close. That was a mistake. Never done that again. Who says I can't learn? Anyway, enjoy your 4th.